Between 2019 and 2021 in Droitwich, Worcestershire, a shocking number of 999 calls were received regarding the welfare and treatment of a young 9-year-old who lived there. His name was Alfie Steele.
I'm hearing some really worrying noises from next door.
Hello, it sounds like my neighbours are doing something bad to their kid in the bath, like they're really hurting them.
The multitude of calls concerning the boy's care and harsh punishments resulted in law enforcement arriving on numerous occasions, as well as the child protection system being involved, and they were in contact with the family for at least 3 years leading up to his murder. Following his death, when a long-awaited report finally came out, it exposed the outrageous number of chances these agencies had to save Alfie. Sadly, even though the entire community is trying desperately to get Alfie some help, he had no option but to endure the torture and cruel behavior of his mother's boyfriend until the bitter end. As presented, this case does involve the death of a child and the atrocious abuse he was subjected to. With that said, viewer discretion is advised. Welcome back to the dark side of life. It's been proven time and time again that not everyone is capable of or deserving of having children, whether that be because they just don't seem to want the kid, or they are too busy partying and just don't have the selflessness required to raise a child. Fitting this criteria would be Carla Scott, who prior to having children was living in the Scotlands, which can be found in North Wolverhampton. According to Paul Scott, Carla's father, when it came to Carla and her siblings, he was overly strict with them throughout their childhood and would later admit that he now knows it was wrong. Without exception, his children were not allowed to play out of his sight, they had strict bedtimes, they were not allowed to bring any friends around, and they had to partake in chores such as cooking, cleaning, and yard work. If his children failed to follow these rules, they would face severe consequences from Paul. Laying hands on his children was an option, which he admitted to on several instances, but claimed to only use his hand and never any other instruments. Other punishments included placing the children in a chair facing the wall in the kitchen for an extended period of time, or he would just make them hold their arms straight out in front of them, basically until it hurt to do so. It's clear they grew up in rough conditions where they probably felt like they were walking on eggshells, trying not to upset their authoritarian father, which, to be clear, is no excuse for what she would later put her own son through. According to a close friend of Carla, throughout her school years, she always seemed to end up with the guys that didn't want to commit to her and ended up leaving her. She was also described as being incredibly needy when it came to her boyfriends. After high school, Carla wasn't really that interested in going to college or anything, and she just wanted to get a job. She was seemingly more invested in partying rather than creating a future for herself. She racked up what many would label a notorious reputation in the Scotlands after high school. She would always be seen dressing provocatively and going out to parties. It was obvious that Carla was in love with getting all the attention, and she was never known for being classy, to say the least. In Carla's mid-20s, she found herself in another relationship, this time falling pregnant with the man's child. Exactly who this man is almost impossible for me to find, but there's a good chance his last name is Steele. Before she gave birth, Carla and this man would move into a council home in the Scotlands. Council flats are a form of British public housing where she and her partner would be able to raise their child in stable conditions. Except for shortly after they began living there, neighbors noted how in disarray their property constantly was, to the point it would bother many of those who lived around them, prompting many of them to go personally tell Carla that she needed to make change and get her place straightened up. Yet she never would. She didn't seem to care about anything other than what she wanted, and the mess she was leaving behind didn't bother her at all. Most people have consideration for the people around them. Carla had none, setting the scene for her newborn's upbringing that was bound to be filled with chaos and hardship. It's not stated anywhere exactly when she gave birth to her son, although we can assume it was sometime between 2011 and 2012 given the time frame we have. Alfie Steele was born on the living room floor of his Wolverhampton home. He was an innocent, sweet little boy who was happy to be alive, regardless of being thrust right into Carla's chaotic world. As time went on, Alfie spent the majority of his time growing up in Wolverhampton, where those who knew him had nothing but amazing things to say about him. Many of them said he grew into a lovely little lad that was overly polite with those he interacted with in the neighborhood. He was always laughing and having fun anytime they saw him around playing. His grandfather Paul spoke about Alfie and how smart he was growing up, saying he had a smile that would melt butter. He was intelligent and inquisitive and courageous like a lion. Sadly, even after Alfie's life began, Carla was still more focused on herself and having a good time. That was more important to her than looking after her son. By the time Alfie was a little bit older and he was around 4 to 5 years old, neighbors would often spot him just roaming around on the neighborhood streets, with his parents nowhere in sight. Many of these neighbors took it upon themselves to sort of look after Alfie anytime they saw him and felt he was in need. Julie Peacock, a resident of Wolverhampton for over 30 years, said, "There was a group of us on the estate who just felt sorry about how neglected he always was. And because he was always wandering around on the street outside his house, we used to take him in and give him meals. He was really thin, was usually in a school uniform, and was always starving hungry. Some kids can be picky about what they eat, but whatever you gave him, he would gobble it down." Which paints a clear picture on how disregarded Alfie was by his parents growing up. The neighbors knew that Carla was probably off doing nothing of importance while leaving her son to fend for himself. Julie would describe her house in Wolverhampton as it was one of those houses where you felt like wiping your feet as you came out rather than as you went in. The house had no carpets, just mattresses in the bedrooms without any bedding. Carla would always be seen out at the local clubs, and she would have Alfie with her on many of these occasions, though she would still dress provocatively, usually in short skirts, a tight top, and boots. But again, she wasn't even looking after Alfie at the club. She still partied as if he wasn't even there. Other people who were in the club had to start looking after Alfie, and they would be buying him pop and chips, while Carla was off doing her own thing, buying herself drink after drink. Yet back at home, Carla is not paying any of her bills on time until the cable company shows up and cuts off her cable. When they cut her cable off, she would just switch cable companies until the same thing happened again, trying to avoid paying altogether. She never intended on saving money, she was just living directly in the moment for herself. Giving us a pretty good idea about who Carla is. She had no interest in toning down her lifestyle in order to properly take care of her son. Alfie was a smart kid too, quickly learning who he could turn to for help when he needed it, and those neighbors would gladly take him in and feed him anytime they could. Alfie would often ask another resident, David Newton, to put Arsenal on his TV so he could sit and watch them play for a while, because it was his favorite soccer team. Those genuine individuals would lose contact with Alfie and Carla when they decided to move sometime in 2018, after her and Alfie's father separated. Carla would tell some friends of hers that she needed something new, a fresh start, and she planned to move to Droitwich to find it. Now, Alfie had been placed on a protection plan in 2018 for neglect, and if I understand correctly, this was shortly after they arrived in Droitwich. However, it's unclear exactly what led to this initial protection plan being put in place, but it very well could be just her horrible job at being a mother. Either way, in 2018, Carla and Alfie landed in Droitwich, Worcestershire. Carla and Alfie had been staying in Droitwich for about a year at this point, with a lot of reports saying they were actually homeless when they first got there, until they started staying in their own little flat. Around August of 2019, Carla was standing outside of her house one day, and there was some guys across the street who had been working on a tree, and they were finishing up their work for the day, when suddenly one of the men jumps out of the truck and approaches Carla, introducing himself and asking for her number. That man would be Dirk Howell, a career criminal who spent years in prison. After talking for a bit, Carla would give him her number, and the duo would quickly begin seeing each other. Almost immediately after she started bringing Dirk around Alfie and her house, people started to raise concerns about her new boyfriend. Dirk, who also went by Dean, reportedly grew up in Wolverhampton for some time, but eventually ended up in foster care. According to statements that Dirk would later make, after he ended up in foster care, he started to commit various crimes, and eventually his foster parents would commit those crimes with him, estimating that he spent upwards of 22 years in prison for his previous crimes. After their relationship began, it's alleged that Carla did some form of background check on her new boyfriend to further understand who he was, which she was able to do under something called Clare's Law. This was probably for her safety rather than Alfie's, and it's said that Dirk did disclose some of his past and criminal history to Carla, the true extent of which is unknown though. So it's unclear exactly how much of his past she was aware of while dating him. Regardless, his presence in her house did not go unnoticed. He was smoking tons of weed in the home, and neighbors were quick to learn that he had an explosive temper. They started hearing and witnessing Dirk become viscerally angry towards Alfie time and time again. Not being able to ignore the abuse, they started to call the police, which led to a catalog of missed opportunities to spare this boy some suffering. Yet each and every time someone screamed out to get Alfie some help, the signs were missed, or Carla and Dirk would somehow deceive the authorities to buy themselves more time. Dozens of tips came in, but none of them led to his removal. Between the 3-year period of 2018 and 2021, it came to light that the West Mercia Police Department and the Worcestershire County Council had been contacted on 64 separate occasions in regards to the welfare of Alfie. His and mistreatment began shortly after her new boyfriend moved in with them, which, shockingly, was within weeks of Carla and Dirk starting to see each other. It's important to mention that this entire time, no matter what is going on in the home, Carla is claiming that Dirk does not pose a threat to her or her son. However, within weeks of Dirk moving in with them, a neighbor starts to hear banging and the cries of a young child coming from outside that went on for about 25 minutes. It was Alfie crying and pleading to be let back in the house after being locked outside by Dirk. This neighbor would pull their phone out and record a portion of this harrowing situation. It's difficult to believe that a mother would allow her new boyfriend to move in and instantly treat her son this way. With this treatment being seen by the community, the authorities were alerted, leading to another protection plan being put in place around October of 2019. Under this protection plan, Dirk was banned from overnight stays at their house, as well as unsupervised visits with Alfie. Anytime these plans were put in place and Dirk would be ordered to complete something, such as parenting classes or anger management, he never would, and he had no intention of trying to. A month after this, more reports came in about Dirk behaving cruelly to Alfie, leading to the presence of law enforcement once more. This time Dirk would be discovered in the house after Carla would lie to the officers and tell them that he wasn't there. It's my understanding, because of the protection plan that was in play, Dirk was not supposed to be in the house at the time the police arrived, so they made him leave. What we know for sure is at this point, Dirk started targeting the neighbors that he felt were responsible for making the calls to get Alfie some help, trying to intimidate them into not saying anything. Several weeks after this, a social worker would visit their house, and when she knocked, Carla would answer the door. The social worker, Miss Waldron, would speak with Carla for a moment, telling her that she needed to do a risk assessment on Dirk Howell for the safety of Alfie. So Carla leaves the door and goes to inform him, and when she tells Dirk this, Miss Waldron can overhear him say, "I don't want to talk to the fucking social workers," which quickly turned into an argument between Dirk and Carla, and then Miss Waldron hears Dirk shout at Carla that she needed to choose between him and Alfie. Carla screams back that she chooses Alfie over him, most likely knowing that at that moment the social worker could hear the answer to that question. After that, Dirk just stormed out of the house in a rage. Throughout this time period, Teachers and school staff are taking note of Alfie, his hygiene, and his hunger while he's attending classes, saying that he was constantly starving whenever he was present, causing many of the teachers to raise concerns over the boy's parents and how they were caring for him. Going into 2020, things only got worse for Alfie. His mother continued to put herself and her boyfriend above his safety and well-being, and he had no defense from the torment. In February of 2020, neighbors called again to report really loud music and insane parties they were throwing with the child present, which was followed by further threats by the couple. Then the same month, another report was made about Alfie being hungry in school. March of 2020, and they saw the first lockdown from the pandemic, which threw a wrench into the way a lot of these agencies operated. The school that Alfie was attending was closed to the majority of students, but remained open to allow vulnerable children to still come in and learn in class. Alfie was one of those kids, classified as a vulnerable learner, who had the right to continue going to school, but Carla decided against it, and she wouldn't let him go during the lockdown. Around this time, there was a legal discussion about removing Alfie from their care, but it stated since Carla seemed to be working with social workers and police, that threshold for removal had not been met, basically meaning that Alfie's situation wasn't serious enough yet. On April 4th, 2020, the family's next-door neighbor, Daniel Grindrod, felt the need to make a 999 call after hearing distressing sounds coming from next door, saying that he heard banging, crashing, and a male shouting. This was accompanied by the whimpering of a child. In his 999 call, he stated, "It sounded like a child in distress, a child whimpering, pleading almost."
I'm hearing some really worrying noises from next door. I've heard what sounds like a child in distress.
This resulted in an officer showing up to their house to see what was going on with Alfie. When they knocked on the door, Carla answered it and looked confused as to why the police were even there. The officer would inform Carla they needed to do a check on Alfie, and when they did, they found him asleep in his bed. So without ever talking to Alfie, that officer left the home. Over the following weeks, Graham and Rosemary Willits, a couple who also lived near them, would make a number of concerning calls just trying to get Alfie some help. One day in April, they called when the house just suddenly went deadly quiet, as opposed to usually being overly loud and obnoxious. Days later, they made another call when they noticed Alfie standing outside of their flat like a statue, being disciplined. Graham initially made the call and told the operators, "There's something going on. It's just not right. It doesn't feel right." Then his upset wife would take the phone from him. "They've got a young lad. They've got him in the garden disciplining him. He's standing like a statue."
They had him in the garden, disciplining him. He's standing like a statue. Yeah.
Your husband's had to report them before?
Yes, yes. This lad, we believe, is called Alfie.
What she was describing was one of the punishment tactics that Carla and Dirk would use to discipline Alfie. They would march him outside, no matter what time of day it was, and force him to stand there without moving at all. Other times they would do this, and then they'd throw buckets of cold water over him. A couple days after Graham and Rosemary made those calls, Dirk would momentarily make eye contact with Mr. Willits while he was standing in the garden, and Dirk would shout at Mr. Willits, calling him a scumbag for making that call days prior. In June of 2020, Dirk would end up getting arrested for a couple charges after getting caught shoplifting on 2 separate occasions. When he was caught the second time, he decided to punch one of the ladies that worked there. During the same month, more meetings were held where again, the threshold to remove Alfie from their care was not met, and Alfie was left in their care still under a protection plan. Whatever this threshold is for children being removed needs to be reviewed or lowered. This behavior from the couple and the reporting from the neighbors is basically non-stop. Week after week, month after month, something is happening to Alfie. Fast forward to August 3rd of 2020, and Gemma Alcott, who lived next to the trio, started hearing what sounded like clear harm being done to a child. She couldn't ignore what she was hearing, so she picked up the phone and dialed 999.
Emergency?
Hello, it sounds like my neighbours are doing something bad to their kid in the bath, like they're really hurting them.
Right, so do you know what their names are?
The woman's called Carla, and the guy is called Dean.
Okay, so how long has this been going on for today?
I've just heard some noise over the last sort of 15 minutes. I heard lots of banging, and it sounded like someone thrashing around in a bathtub, went into the toilet, and it sounds like you can hear whether he's being hit and held under the water or something, and like loads of thrashing around. It's concerning because I know they've got social services involvement as well, and the police have been before a few times.
All right then. And what about the woman? Can you hear her at all?
I could hear her voice. I could just hear raised voices.
And did it sound like she was involved in what was going on with the kid, or was it just the male?
It sounded more like just the male.
Okay. And this is still going on at the moment?
I could still hear banging, yeah. It's come downstairs, but I can't hear as much now.
Banging downstairs?
No, I'm downstairs. I thought I just heard a big bang. Hold on. It's quieter now, but I could...
When you say you can hear movement, what do you mean?
It just sounded like I could hear like footsteps and someone walking.
Okay, so no more noise from the bathroom then?
No, I think someone's still in there.
Could you make out what was being said at all?
It sounded, no, I couldn't. I could hear like swear words. I could hear something, and it just sounded threatening and unpleasant, but I couldn't make out words. I could just make out the tone and the you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Not at the moment. I was just really concerned because the noise was already loud, and what I could hear, it didn't sound nice at all. It sounded like a kid was really distressed and fluttering.
Yeah. Okay.
Officers would arrive once more to investigate what's going on with Alfie, and Carla is annoyed that they're even there, claiming that she knows which neighbor it was that called the cops on her, denying all of the claims that Gemma made. Carla would tell the officers that the noises Gemma was hearing could simply be attributed to Alfie playing during bath time. And oddly enough, Dirk was not at the house this time when they visited. It's unclear whether the officers saw and spoke to Alfie that day, but they ended up leaving shortly after this. The following video was captured shortly after that officer left the vicinity. The couple had clearly just planned some form of revenge plot against the neighbor they believed made the call. And it's a good thing that door didn't get open because who knows what their intentions were. Dirk orders Carla to go knock on Gemma's door, and Dirk is off camera hiding just around the corner while Carla is telling him to calm down because he's livid. She rings the doorbell a few times, but according to Gemma, she just didn't want to deal with the confrontation, so she didn't open the door. So eventually the duo just kind of gives up, and Dirk screams out in anger, basically, keep it up and see what happens. I'll burn your house down.
See what happens now. You little fucking burn you out.
In September of 2020, Alfie made his return to school, and right away there were reports of him being overly hungry and unkempt. He was obviously struggling, and these teachers could clearly see it. Around a month after his return, Alfie is in class, and when the teachers are looking at him, he just looks unsettled, like something is deeply disturbing him. They were incredibly worried about him, and he was eventually brought into the office so a staff member could look at him because he was complaining about having severe ear pain. Louise McNally, who is the lead of safeguarding and welfare at Alfie's school, took a look in his ear and instantly realizes it's full of blood and pus. So her first reaction is to grab the phone and call his mother to pick him up, because what he needs is medical attention. Yet when she did this, Alfie became visibly distressed and very upset about having to go home. When they began asking Alfie, what happened to your ear? He would tell them he banged it the previous night, and that was all he would say. It is heartbreaking to hear of his reaction to being sent home, knowing he was sent home almost certainly without having his ear infection properly taken care of. When he arrived back home, he was thrust right back into the brutal treatment his mother and stepfather were subjecting him to. Then came the information there was a possibility that Dirk and Carla were dealing drugs out of their house. Moving into 2021, Alfie's situation and care didn't improve. In fact, it never did. Dirk, again, was not allowed to be in the home with Alfie because he didn't complete a single requirement given to him. Carla demanded a change of social workers for some reason, and their protection plan was being reviewed for what seems like the 20th time. With red flags emerging from every area of Alfie's life, they all led to nothing more than a quick check, a meeting about requirements that were never met, or a change or review in their protection plan. I didn't even mention every instance this boy was reported, by people passing by, teachers, neighbors. It truly feels like the entire community was aware of the outcome if he stayed in that house. It pisses me off that these people tried so hard to get Alfie out of there. Witnessing and hearing the abuse he was going through, seeing him skinny and starving from being deprived of food at home, knowing damn well this bitch of a man is beating this kid, putting him through all kinds of hell, and these agencies failed to keep him safe. Before they knew it, in February of 2021, Alfie was beaten, tortured, and forced beneath cold waters until he died.
Every single one of them times is a time that could have stopped my grandson dying.
During the third national lockdown on February 18th, 2021, Carla made this 999 call, claiming that her son had fallen asleep in the bath and was unresponsive.
Emergency, which service?
Hello, can I have an ambulance, please?
Ambulance, thank you.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
No, he's not. He fell asleep in the bath.
Okay, can I take the location?
It's Fashion Drive.
Okay, so an ambulance has been arranged for the patient.
Right.
Is there any risk of coronavirus?
No.
Okay, so what's
But
happening?
he fell asleep in the bath. He got asthma, and when he was a baby, he had pneumonia.
So he fell asleep in the bath?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Is he submerged in water or?
Yes.
Right, have you got him out?
Yes, I've got him out, yeah.
Okay.
We're doing CPR.
You doing CPR, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's possible he could have drowned in there?
Yeah.
Okay. How old is he, sorry?
He's 9.
9, okay. Is he breathing?
I can't hear nothing.
Right, okay. Can you if you put your hand by his nose, can you feel anything? If you put your hand...
No, I can't feel nothing at all.
Right, okay. If you switch your phone to hands-free now on loudspeaker, lay him on his back on a flat, hard surface.
Yeah.
Kneel by his side.
Yeah.
Gently tilt their head back and lift their chin upwards.
Oh, tilt his head back.
Yes. Tilt his head back and lift his chin up.
Yeah.
Pinch the nostrils together and keep them pinched.
Yeah.
Take a normal breath in. Place your lips around the mouth and blow for 1 to 2 seconds, just enough to make. Can you see the chest rise and check their mouth for any obstructions?
No, there's no obstructions.
Right. Okay. Can you see the chest rising?
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to help him with his breathing, but we don't need to do the chest compressions.
Right, so shall I just keep doing that?
Gently tilt his head back and lift his chin upwards. Pinch his nostrils together and keep them pinched. Take a normal breath in and place your lips around the mouth and blow for 1 to 2 seconds, just enough to make their chest rise. Do this, okay? What's his breathing like?
Come on, baby.
Okay, what can you see his chest rising and falling?
No, I can't.
Okay, we need to carry on with. Have we got a pulse?
I can't find one.
Okay, well we'll go back to the BLS. We'll go back to doing life support. Okay, group
okay. So I need you to put your hand flat on his chest again for me. Right, okay. Okay, just carry on. Paula. Hello, caller? Caller, can you hear me?
Was that the crew that's there, or?
He said police.
Police? Okay.
Yeah, police are there. The crew are on the roof. Hello, caller? Hello. Right, okay. And could you like put one hand flat on his chest?
While Carla is on the phone being given instructions on how to perform CPR, you can hear somebody in the background say that the ambulance is coming, and then shortly after that, it seems the police arrive on scene, and once the operator knows that the crew is there, they end the call, leading us to the body cam footage we have of this situation unfolding in their home.
How long ago did you find him?
It was about an hour ago I found him.
An hour ago you found him?
No, I went in there.
Oh, yeah.
And I got him out straight away. And
Sorry, you're not making much sense here, sorry.
sorry.
It's alright, it's alright. When did you first come across him?
About 10 minutes ago.
About 10 minutes ago, that's what I meant, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
sorry.
Okay, it's alright, my love, it's okay.
I think he back to say when he was in the back, because he's got some...
Okay, we'll go... Okay, do you want to... Right.
The EMTs are trying to save Alfie's life, but they're finding it difficult to do so. While probing answers out of Carla, who isn't making any sense to them, they remove Carla from the upstairs situation and take her downstairs into a room where she ends up on a call with Dirk, or Dean. The officer is asking Carla if Dirk is on his way, and she is telling him, yeah, he's on his way, but she's also trying to give off the impression that Dirk has no idea any of this happened.
Alright, was he travelling on train, is he?
No. I was getting the list.
Okay.
Alright, then I'll keep you posted. I've said that you went to one about it. I'll let you know then, and I'll ring you in a bit. Good. Yes. Yes. Sorry, go again. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah, go on then. Yeah. Yeah, I'll ring you back in a bit. I will do. Love you too.
When in reality, Dirk just fled the scene after murdering Alfie, and she is just spewing lies trying to buy him enough time to somehow get out of town. He was really on his way to the train station, attempting to catch a ride anywhere but Droitwich. Authorities one way or another understood that this was happening, and they met him there. You can see that Dirk is clearly trying to run from the situation, but the cops are closely behind and apprehend him.
What's your name, buddy? Huh? What's your name?
Mine, Dirk Howell.
Dirk Howell, right,
Yeah.
okay. I need to have a quick chat with you.
Yeah, we're going to Carla's now.
Say again?
We're going to Carla's.
Right, okay, well, at the moment, put your hands up for me. So at the moment, you're under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. Okay, so you do not have to say anything.
What?
But it may harm in defence. You do not mention one question. Someone say if you're in court. Anything you do, something will be given evidence.
I'm not running. What's supposed to be running?
Meanwhile, Alfie, who was found with 50 sickening injuries to his body, was transported to the Worcester Royal Hospital, and he was pronounced dead after being admitted. Alfie had been deceased far longer than what Carla is telling the officers, and it's almost as if she accidentally told the truth when she initially said he had been found an hour ago, but then quickly changed it to 10 minutes ago. The truth is, Alfie had been murdered and then left in the bathtub while Dirk and Carla talked about how to get away with the murder. The following section of this video will involve the details of young Alfie's death. It is heartbreaking and infuriating to hear the things they put this young boy through. I highly suggest backing out now if you don't want to hear those details. As mentioned, Alfie Steele had over 50 separate injuries to his body, with only a couple that could be attributed to normal childhood cuts and bruises. These injuries were from non-stop torment from Carla and Dirk, where they would constantly hit him with belt or sliders, as well as shoving him into the bathtub. He had an unusual injury to his face that was likely caused by Dirk. He had bruises behind his ears, his head, the sides of his chest walls, and his face was bruised. There was a significant bruise directly at the top of Alfie's head too, that Dr. Malcolmson said was a very rare injury because that's not where you hit your head if you fall over. It's believed on the day he died, Alfie had been viciously attacked by Dirk, where he was beaten and then forced into a cold bath. Then Dirk would hold his head beneath the surface for extended periods of time, trying to cause him as much pain and misery as possible. Although his official cause of death is labeled as unascertained, it's stated that Alfie passed away either due to drowning, concussive head trauma, or mechanical asphyxia. The doctors couldn't determine which one exactly it was that took his life. One thing that is going to stick with me is what Judge Justice Wall said regarding Alfie's death. He stated, "What is clear is that Alfie did not have the quiet death that you tried to portray. His death was violent and brutal. Alfie tried to say no, called in vain for his grandfather to help, and resisted to get into the bath. And maybe it was that resistance that sealed his fate." The judge would also rip into the couple for not calling to get Alfie help sooner, and instead they did some sick shit to cover up how long he had been dead. After realizing they had murdered Alfie, they turned the hot water on to leave his body in the warm water to let it heat up while they got their story straight so that his body wouldn't be cold when officers arrived. Most likely the only time they gave this boy a warm bath. Judge Justice Wall handed Carla Scott a total of 27 years for manslaughter and child cruelty, with a minimum of 17 years before she is eligible for release. He also essentially let Carla know that she's a miserable mother, telling her she put her need for a partner well above her duty to protect her children. Her boyfriend, who she maintained a relationship with after killing her son, was convicted of murdering Alfie. Dirk Howell was subsequently given life in prison with a minimum of 32 years behind bars. The judge described him as a bully who was unable to control his temper, saying he has no doubt that Dirk took pleasure in the pain and suffering he was inflicting on Alfie, labeling their actions as sadistic. I think it's important to mention that neither of these individuals confessed to what they did that day, claiming they never intentionally murdered Alfie, nor did they show any remorse for what they've done. While Dirk was being questioned by police about what happened that day, he admitted that he stopped CPR when it wasn't working, and then he said to Carla, "I can't do this," and I fucked off. I didn't want to be around that situation. My head was a mess. I've seen a lot of things in my past, but I couldn't. Nah. Saying something like this after you just murdered a child, I'd just like to say you're a pathetic bitch. As a 9-year-old boy, I can't even imagine the level of pain, worry, and fear he felt running through his body. These two infuriate me, and I hope the rest of their life is filled with nothing but pain and misery because they do not deserve to breathe. I feel horrible for everyone in this situation who tried reaching out to get Alfie some help, regardless of the threats that were hurled in their direction. They knew how sweet of a child he was, and that he was trapped in a situation he couldn't escape with a mother who never gave him the love he deserved. He was a genuinely inquisitive kid who always wanted to learn about something. He once started telling people he was going to join the army when he got older. He was a smart kid who wasn't afraid of much, and he somehow found a way to smile throughout his ordeal, Some of the neighbors would note they don't know how he did it, but he did. On Saturday, July 16th, a vigil was held where more than 100 people gathered to say a final goodbye to Alfie, some holding blue hearts to symbolize their love for him. We lost a beautiful child that day who had a lot left to give the world. Alfie, you are incredibly brave for fighting through this as long as you did. It's wrong that you were left in this situation when dozens of people cared about you and tried getting you the help they knew you needed. We will never forget you, and we know you're in a better place now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. Rest in peace to Alfie Steele, who passed away on February 18th, 2021.
All I wanted was a good time, but you had other plans that were hurting my feelings I no longer hide. Cause you say what you want, cause you know that you're wrong.
Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you made it to the end, go down to the comment section and let me know if I should release the Patreon that I've had live for months, or just comment lower the threshold. If you want to, you can follow me on Instagram at Robert Clausen with 2 N's. If you have a story suggestion, DM me on there. I think that's all I have for you guys today. Again, I truly appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
All I wanted was a good time, but you had other plans that were hurting my feelings I no longer hide. Cause you say what you want, cause you know that you're wrong.